There are many important questions, and a lot of them are being raised by our next guest. I've been wanting to talk to this guy for a long time. Congressman Mike Gallagher serves as the U.S. Representative for Wisconsin's 8th Congressional District. He joins us now. I had to get special dispensation from Hewitt to get him on the show because he's on Hewitt's show regularly, and Hewitt didn't want to give him up. But I wore Hewitt down, and as I always do, and I finally am able to welcome. And I'm not going to give you any hard time about football, about the Green Bay Packers. I'm just honored to talk to another Mike Gallagher. That's Congressman Mike Gallagher. How are you, sir? Welcome to the Mike Gallagher Show.
It's an honor to be with you. Every time I go on Hewitt and he does some advertisement leading up to the segment, oftentimes he invokes your name or he's saying something about Mike Gallagher. It's very disorienting. Sometimes I think he's talking about me, but I'm proud to be referred to as the lesser Mike Gallagher, not just by Hewitt, but by most of
Every time you do something, I get a flurry of emails of people thinking I'm you. Does anybody ever think you're me?
Yes, I get that a lot. There'll be like a headline. I have a Google alert from my team of something Mike Gallagher did or said, and it happens quite regularly. Good thing you're an upstanding citizen who has committed only a few felonies that I'm aware of.
Not convicted, right? It's a difference, right? Between the conviction is the key. So thank goodness for that. Well, this is going to be a little jarring, Mike Gallagher talking to Mike Gallagher, and I really am honored to welcome you to the show because I'm so grateful for your voice, for your leadership. We need leaders so desperately right now. Tonight, I'm going to be on stage here in the Tampa Bay area with Governor Ron DeSantis with the Job Creators Network, the Bring Small Businesses Back tour. We are in desperate need of some guidance. You talk about the third rail. You've been all over this Wuhan leak. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But right now, with the border exploding, with the debacle in Afghanistan, with the drone strike that slaughtered 7 children and 3 others, Congressman, we knew it was going to be bad. Did you think it was going to get this bad?
No, I didn't. The Biden administration, Biden himself ran promising a return to normalcy. The adults were going to be in charge, but instead we just gotten complete amateurs, absolute amateurs. And the tragedy in Afghanistan, I fear, is going to resonate for weeks and months to come. I fear we're witnessing the slow motion collapse of American deterrence. We know we already have the Chinese Communist Party out there pushing propaganda pieces addressed to the people of Taiwan saying, if you think America is going to come to your defense in the event we decide to invade and effectuate reunification with the mainland, think again, because America can't be relied upon. And of course, for the past 2 years during the pandemic, we've had Chinese Communist Party officials or so-called wolf warrior diplomats all over our social media platforms, effectively co-opting the anti-American woke rhetoric of the far left and weaponizing it against us. So this is a very dangerous time for U.S. national security. What we know from history is clear. It's that weakness invites aggression. It creates a void, a vacuum that our enemies can fill. And we are projecting weakness right now. And that weakness is creating chaos. And so I hope the Biden administration will step back off the ledge. But next week, we're likely to vote on a $3.5 trillion spending bonanza that's absolutely insane. That's going to fundamentally transform this country in a socialist direction. I mean, this is extremely troubling. You mentioned Governor DeSantis. He's doing a great job down in Florida. We need our governors to step up, our state legislatures. Ultimately, though, we need Congress to step up. We're in the minority right now. I think we're in a good position to take back the majority in the House. And if nothing else, that gives us an opportunity to kind of break the glass and pull the emergency brake, because this thing is going off the cliff very quickly.
Well, speaking of insane, and I would use a word evil, as Democrats forced the leadership in the House to strip $1 billion of funding that would have continued to support the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome in Israel, one of our closest, most important allies and friends. The Iron Dome is a purely defensive, process that intercepts missiles and rockets that terrorists fire into civilian communities of Israel, and led by AOC and Ayanna Pressley and all the rest of these kooks on the far left. They don't want that supported, and they demanded they wouldn't support any budget process without stripping $1 billion out of funding for the Iron Dome. What's your reaction to what your colleagues in the House decided to do about that?
Well, I got to debate AOC on the House floor yesterday, and she was making all sorts of specious claims about the defense budget. At the same time, she wants to push through a $3.5 trillion minimum budget. But it's even worse than that on the Iron Dome funding. So we're sitting there ready to go to the floor to vote. All of a sudden, the floor goes radio silent, and they basically have a revolt from the Hamas caucus in the Democratic caucus about the $1 billion in Iron Dome funding. They strip it from the bill. We waste 2 hours as they try and figure that out. And then just yesterday, they reintroduced a bill that would restore $1 billion in funding for Iron Dome funding because they were just getting criticized. So this is a complete Keystone Cops operation. Yeah. And I think it really suggests what they want to do and what the administration wants to do, which is to resurrect the lifeless corpse of the Iran deal. And that will create absolute chaos in the region and further undermine Israeli security.
I love that. The Hamas caucus. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to use that again, and I'll take credit. You know what I mean? Because I'm not going to give it to the other Mike Gallagher.
Well, Mike Gallagher did say it. So
that's true. That's true. That will be accurate. It will be completely accurate. It's the way the left media does it every day. So why not? You know, you speak of the rhetoric, and I want to get to Fauci and Wuhan and this disastrous leadership that has truly failed the American people over how to get through COVID. I want to give you an example of rhetoric, insane rhetoric, with thousands and thousands of illegals crossing the border and this encampment in Del Rio, the Biden administration pretending they're going to deport these Haitians, but they're not. The Biden administration is putting many in very, very large numbers, according to U.S. officials, into the United States. So another lie. Let's listen together to another doozy, another Lulu in the U.S. Congress, Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
What we witnessed takes us back hundreds of years. What we witnessed was worse than what we witnessed in slavery.
So she's talking, of course, about the images on Twitter of the Border Patrol agents on horseback with reins. Maxine Waters said that image is worse than what we witnessed in slavery. With all due respect to Congresswoman Waters, I believe that slavery was a heck of a lot worse than that incident at the border.
But this is the same woman who was effectively encouraging people to riot if the verdict in Minneapolis had gone a different way. This is completely reckless. That was a lie. Even Mayorkas, I believe, went out there and said, no, that's not actually what happened. At the same time, Jen Psaki was propagating the lie from the White House. So this administration internally is contradicting itself. And the fact is, the blame for the absolute crisis at the southern border belongs with Biden. This administration has been consistently signaling to come here, that amnesty is effectively possible. We have a completely broken immigration system that needs to be fixed, but it is being made worse because of the open borders policy by the Democratic Party. This is a recipe for chaos. This is an absolute disaster at the southern border, and the president has been burying his head in the sand and hoping he can manage it as a news cycle that will disappear. And though he's getting an assist from the legacy media, I think the American people can see through it. I think this is why we overperformed in 2020, because it turns out a lot of Hispanic American families in Texas and Arizona don't like illegal immigration. So we have to talk about this, and we have to put pressure on the Biden administration.
Congressman Mike Gallagher is with us from Wisconsin, joining us. Let's talk COVID for just a moment. All these headlines that are so maddening when we talk about the mixed messages we've gotten, the failed leadership from Dr. Fauci on down. Here's a headline from the National Review. After mandating masks outdoors, Oregon's active COVID cases have increased 73%. Then I see a report at abc.com, the legacy media, as you call it. Experts say the U.S. will likely have to learn to live with the virus. Wow, that's a real news flash. Some of us have been saying that all for almost 2 years, and yet Dr. Fauci digs his heels in, seems to be MIA when it comes to explaining the funding, this gain-of-function research in Wuhan. You've been all over that. Explain why you've demanded that Dr. Anthony Fauci resign from his position.
Well, remember, to tie it to the mask thing, Fauci lied to us about masks early on in the pandemic. Right. Fauci lied to us about the fact that there'd be no human-to-human transmission. He went out there and defended the Chinese Communist Party for the way they were handling this. And then comes the absolute biggest lie, which I believe Dr. Fauci lied to Congress. He went there and when questioned under oath in the Senate, said that his organization, NIAID, did not provide funding via third-party organizations like the EcoHealth Alliance, run by this completely ethically compromised person named Peter Daszak, that did cooperative research with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Well, now we're starting to get all of these documents emerging, proving that Fauci was lying. NIAID provided multiple grants to the EcoHealth Alliance, and EcoHealth Alliance was doing research in Wuhan that was taking naturally occurring viruses and making them, via experimentation and unnatural means, more infectious, more pathogenic. No matter how Fauci wants to redefine the term, that is a textbook definition of gain of function. So our taxpayer dollars were funding this dangerous research that Fauci defended publicly for the last decade and built his entire professional reputation on this type of research. Well, now we're learning that the most likely hypothesis is that this emerged from a lab in Wuhan where our money was being used to fund this dangerous research, and Fauci has lied to Congress about it. That is a crime. He, at a minimum, needs to resign. But really what frustrates me is there seems to be no urgency around investigating this and getting to the bottom of this. And the Biden administration just did a 90-day intelligence review that came back with nothing and said, well, we're unlikely to know what happened without the cooperation of the Chinese Communist Party. That is a total unacceptable cop-out that we should not be satisfied with. There are multiple things we can do. We can declassify all the intel, we can release all of these grant proposals, and we can start to pressure the commies in China to come clean, and we can support Taiwan's membership in the WHO, and we can boot out Tedros as head of the WHO and get someone in there who will actually do a real investigation. I just refuse to accept that there's nothing we can do, and every American should be outraged by the repeated lies that Fauci has told, because this thing has completely upended our lives, killed millions, lost trillions of dollars, and required us to sacrifice a lot of our civil liberties. This is the biggest scandal of the last few decades, in my opinion.
Millions of us are grateful for your voice, Congressman Gallagher. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us on the Mike Gallagher Show. Please stay out of trouble, because I don't want to go through the emails, okay? So just keep your head down, all right?
I'll do my best to stay out of jail.
Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate it. Keep fighting the good fight. Congressman Mike Gallagher joining